Having trouble mixing your patches at home, only to find out that when you get to rehearsal, possibly on stage the next day, the sound's not coming out so clear in the PA. We're talking about hertz versus kilohertz today. As digital devices become more and more advanced, we're having the opportunity to listen to ourselves through headphones. Now, this is a common feature on amps and most digital effects units coming out that a lot of people take part of, mostly because either their house is pretty quiet or they have time to practice at home when the family's sleeping, or you might even be in a tight quarters where you're not able to use loud projection speakers. Now, the one key problem that a lot of people face, not with just the Firehawk, but most amps and effects, is setting a tone and an EQ at home, finding out that when you go to rehearsal, even a stage performance, that tone is vastly different. And the key problem with that is that you've heard something completely different. When we look at what a human person listens at, the frequency range is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Most of common headphones that we can purchase online and not in a music store are emphasized either in bass, high tweeting, or even maybe the frequency range is going to be slightly different. So when you hear your tone and guitar tone or a bass tone, even when you're mixing and mastering a demo tape, that sound is going to be completely different when put on a different size speaker. Now, for the last 7 years, I've been using these great pair of monitors in my studio by M-Audio. Now, the models I'm using are BX5 D2s, and they are an absolute great powerhouse for being 5-inch speakers with a 1-inch tweeter. Now, what I use them for is mixing and mastering, making guitar patches, rehearsing in my studio, and then making guitar patches. Now, if you're a bass player, I highly recommend nothing less than an 8-inch woofer, and I highly recommend Mackeys. They're great for drums, they're great for basses. If you are a piano player or a violinist or anything of that nature, I recommend either a 5-inch or an 8-inch speaker by someone by Yamaha. I've had different musicians come up to me, and that's their preference. But M-Audio, I think, puts out a very quality product, and I think if I were to purchase an 8-inch, I'd be even more impressed. Now, my original idea was to make a guitar track using my monitors and one using headphones that I have in my studio that I used to use to make patches. What I thought was you might not get what I'm trying to convey for the exercise. So instead, I found a sound test on the YouTube, and I thought I'd put it in this video. And this way, you guys can use what you have at home, and you can start hearing the difference. Now, this is a standard wavering tone. It's not going to go any octaves. It's just going to go from the very low hertz to the very high hertz. And the object is for you guys to hear with different devices when you start hearing the tone and when you stop hearing the tone. So, grab a paper, grab a pen, grab all your devices that you're going to use for listening, and I want you guys to label each device, and then when you start hearing and when you stop, and compare and contrast. Now, I've done the same thing in my studio, and I do throw out a word of caution. My hearing is not that great anymore. My job, I'm around a lot of equipment, loud sounds, and I've been around speakers and concerts, so my ears are not that best. But anyways, so my BX5s, these are the specs. The low hertz are 53 to 56, and they go all the way up to 22 kilohertz, and with the crossover of 3,000 kilohertz. Now, my headphones that I use in the studio that I used to use for mastering and mixing, and I don't anymore because I had such bad quality of mixes after the fact, are Pioneers SE390s, and they are super rich in bass. They're great for listening to music after they're mastered, but not while they're being mastered. That response is 5 hertz to 29,000 kilohertz, right? So a little bit of a difference on the back end. So when I listen to the wave tone that's going to be here, that's going to be put on the video here in a little bit. With the BX5, I started hearing the sound around 29 hertz, and then the sound cut off from my ears at least around 16.2 kilohertz. With the Pioneer headphones, 21 hertz is when I started hearing it. I definitely felt the bass oscillate with my ears. And 15.8 kilohertz is when I stopped hearing it. Now, I did one more test using my laptop, and I didn't start hearing the tone in my laptop until 34 hertz, and I stopped hearing it at about 12. Now, I'm using a MacBook Pro, so the speakers are great, but they're not mixing speakers. They're just listening. So there's a big difference. Now, what does all of this mean? So if you're using these different devices and you're using these preset EQs that a lot of these headphones that you purchase that are not flat response for studios are built with, you're going to build patches that are un-EQ'd. So when they go through a front of the house and they go through a PA, your perception of what you think is going to come out is going to come out completely different. You might push too much bass, you might pull too much mids back, vice versa. Mainly your tone is not going to be the same, which will leave you in a weird predicament. Either A, you're going to be so far out that you have to stop and readjust your tone, or B, you're going to have to tweak on the spot and hopefully you don't miss a step. Either way, when it comes down to getting sound checks, you usually don't have a lot of time. You usually get probably half a song, one song in, and that's all you get. And for rehearsals, it's usually hard to get everyone in the same room for a set amount of time, so you don't want to use as much as that time for practicing your music. So what I suggest is spend time and do your homework, get an amp, or rather a monitor and a set of headphones that are flat response that you like, and start using those guys. So before this video comes on, I want you to grab a pen, I want you to grab a paper, and label all the devices you plan to use, and I want you to write down when the sound you hear audibly begins and when it stops for the hertz and the kilohertz, and list them for all the devices, so that way you guys can notice when the sound starts and stops. That's all I got for you guys. I'm going to play the video for you. Go ahead and do those homework. If you have any questions, if you have any problems or suggestions you want to go ahead and put out, go ahead and leave the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. Other than that, I'll see you guys later.